Welcome back to Econosphere, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of global economics. Today, we're exploring one of Southeast Asia's most remarkable transformation stories, Malaysia's incredible journey from a colonial commodity supplier to a sophisticated, strategically positioned economic force that's reshaping the region's future. Picture this. Just 50 years ago, Malaysia was primarily known for three things: tin mines, rubber plantations, and palm oil farms. Fast forward to today, and you'll find a nation that's become a crucial hub for semiconductors, a magnet for digital nomads, and a key player in global trade routes. But here's what makes Malaysia's story truly fascinating. They didn't follow the typical playbook that most developing nations use. While countries like China relied on massive populations and cheap labor, and others like Singapore focused on becoming financial centers, Malaysia carved out its own unique path. They've managed to build a diversified, resilient economy that punches well above its weight class on the global stage. So what exactly is Malaysia's secret sauce? How did they navigate the challenges that have trapped so many other middle-income countries? And perhaps most importantly, what does their continued rise mean for the balance of power in Asia? By the end of this video, you'll understand why Malaysia isn't just another success story. It's potentially the most strategically important economy in Southeast Asia. The foundation: learning from the best. To understand Malaysia's economic transformation, we need to start with a critical decision made in the 1970s that would shape the country's entire future. Fresh from independence and determined to chart their own course, Malaysian leaders made a choice that sounds simple, but was actually quite revolutionary. They decided to become the world's best students. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, Malaysia looked around at their neighbors and asked a crucial question: who's doing this economic development thing really well? Their answer came in the form of the four Asian tigers: Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. These were economies that had successfully transitioned from agriculture to manufacturing, from poor to prosperous in just a few decades. But here's where Malaysia's approach became brilliant. They didn't just copy what these countries were doing. They studied the underlying principles and adapted them to their own unique circumstances. Think of it like learning to cook from master chefs. You don't just memorize their recipes, you understand the techniques, the timing, and the reasoning behind each step so you can create your own masterpieces. Malaysia's government implemented what they called the New Economic Policy, which had three main pillars: reducing poverty, addressing income inequality, and building world-class domestic institutions. But here's the key: they recognized that they couldn't do this alone. They needed partners, mentors, and investors who could share not just their money, but their knowledge. This is where Japan entered the picture as Malaysia's most important early partner. During the 1980s and 90s, Japanese companies like Mitsubishi, Honda, and Toyota didn't just build factories in Malaysia, they transferred entire industrial ecosystems. Malaysian workers learned advanced manufacturing techniques, quality control processes, and supply chain management. Companies like Sony, Panasonic, and Hitachi helped build Malaysia's electronics industry from the ground up. The genius of this approach was that Malaysia wasn't just providing cheap labor. They were building genuine industrial capacity. Every foreign investment became a learning opportunity. Every joint venture became a chance to absorb new technologies and management practices. Geographic goldmine: location as strategy. Now, let's talk about something that Malaysia couldn't choose but has leveraged masterfully: its geographic location. If you look at a map of global shipping routes, you'll notice something remarkable about Malaysia's position. The country sits astride one of the most important waterways in the world, the Strait of Malacca. To put this in perspective, imagine if someone built a country right in the middle of the busiest highway in the world. That's essentially what Malaysia's geographic position represents for global trade. Roughly 25% of all traded goods pass through the waters that Malaysia borders or controls. This isn't just convenient, it's strategically crucial. But Malaysia's geographic advantages go beyond just being on important shipping lanes. The country has what economists call a time zone advantage that's become increasingly valuable in our digital age. Malaysia's business hours overlap perfectly with both Asian markets and European markets, while also providing some coverage for American markets. This means Malaysian businesses can communicate with partners across three major economic regions within a single business day. This geographic sweet spot has made Malaysia incredibly attractive for a new type of economic activity: digital services and remote work hubs. thousands of professionals from higher-cost countries have relocated to Malaysia, where they can maintain their international salaries while enjoying a significantly lower cost of living. It's like getting the best of both worlds, global earning potential with local spending power. The Malaysian government recognized this trend early and created visa programs specifically designed to attract digital nomads and remote workers. These programs, like the Malaysia My Second Home initiative, have brought in significant foreign currency while also creating demand for local services, real estate, and infrastructure. The innovation challenge, breaking the middle income trap. But here's where Malaysia's story becomes more complex and frankly more interesting. Success brings its own challenges, and Malaysia is currently facing what economists call the middle income trap. This is the point where countries get stuck between being low-cost producers and high-value innovators. Think of it this way. Malaysia became very good at making things that other countries designed. Japanese companies would develop new electronics, then Malaysian factories would manufacture them efficiently and cost-effectively. This worked brilliantly for decades and helped Malaysia build a strong industrial base. But there's a problem with this model. It makes you dependent on other people's innovation. As Malaysia's wages rose and other countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh offered even cheaper labor, Malaysia faced a crucial choice. They could try to compete on cost, which would mean keeping wages low and accepting a lower standard of living, or they could try to move up the value chain by becoming innovators themselves. Malaysia chose the harder but more sustainable path innovation. Their new industrial master plan, targeting 2030, represents one of the most ambitious economic transformation programs in Southeast Asia. The plan focuses on three key areas that are absolutely crucial for breaking out of the middle-income trap. First, they're pushing hard into high-complexity industries. Instead of just assembling semiconductors designed elsewhere, Malaysian companies are getting involved in chip design and advanced manufacturing processes. The country now handles 13% of global semiconductor testing and packaging, and companies like Intel have established major research and development centers in Malaysia. Second, they're investing heavily in research and development capabilities. This means building world-class universities, attracting international researchers, and creating innovation ecosystems where startups can thrive alongside established companies. It's a long-term play that requires patience and sustained investment, but it's essential for sustainable growth. Third, they're embracing what's called Industry 4.0, the integration of digital technologies, artificial intelligence, and automation into traditional manufacturing. This allows Malaysian companies to remain competitive even as wages rise, because they're competing on efficiency and quality rather than just cost. The purchasing power advantage, living large on less one of Malaysia's most underappreciated advantages, is something called purchasing power parity, and it's absolutely crucial for understanding why the country has become so attractive to both investors and individuals. Let me explain this concept with a simple example that'll make everything clear. Imagine you have $50,000 to spend per year. In San Francisco or New York, that money might get you a tiny apartment, basic transportation, and not much left over for entertainment or savings. But take that same $50,000 to Kuala Lumpur, and suddenly you can afford a beautiful condominium, excellent healthcare, great food, reliable transportation, and still have money left over for travel and savings. This isn't just about things being cheap in Malaysia, it's about the country offering genuine value. Malaysia has built modern infrastructure, excellent healthcare systems, and high-quality services while maintaining a cost structure that's significantly lower than developed Western countries. This purchasing power advantage creates what economists call a virtuous cycle. Foreign residents and businesses are attracted by the low costs and high quality of life. They bring money into the economy, which creates jobs for locals and generates tax revenue for the government. That revenue gets invested in even better infrastructure and services, which attracts more foreign investment and residents. The Malaysian government has been smart about managing this trend. Rather than letting foreign money drive up costs for locals, they've channeled foreign investment into productive uses, new infrastructure, better education systems, and improved public services that benefit everyone. Navigating challenges, corruption, inequality, and regional competition. Now, let's be honest, Malaysia's economic story isn't all sunshine and success. The country has faced some significant challenges that provide important lessons for other developing economies. The most dramatic example was the 1MDB scandal, which became one of the largest financial scandals in modern history. A sovereign wealth fund that was supposed to develop Malaysia's economy was allegedly used to fund lavish lifestyles and, ironically, to finance Hollywood movies including The Wolf of Wall Street. This scandal cost Malaysia an estimated $4 billion and seriously damaged the government's credibility. But here's what's interesting about how Malaysia handled this crisis. Instead of covering it up or minimizing it, the country used it as a wake-up call to strengthen its institutions. New anti-corruption measures were implemented, transparency was increased, and reforms were made to prevent similar scandals in the future. It's a perfect example of how mature economies deal with setbacks. They learn from them and build better systems. Malaysia also faces ongoing challenges with regional inequality. The country is essentially split between the more developed peninsular Malaysia, where most of the major cities and industries are located, and East Malaysia, which remains more rural and less developed. Managing this geographic inequality while ensuring that economic growth benefits all citizens is an ongoing challenge. There's also the question of regional competition. As Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and other Southeast Asian countries develop their own economies, Malaysia needs to continuously evolve to maintain its competitive advantages. This is actually a healthy dynamic. It pushes all these countries to innovate and improve rather than becoming complacent. The semiconductor success story, building tomorrow's industries. Let's dive deeper into one of Malaysia's most impressive success stories, their semiconductor industry. This sector perfectly illustrates how the country has managed to move from low-value manufacturing to high-tech industry leadership. Malaysia's journey in semiconductors began in the 1970s, when American and Japanese companies were looking for locations to set up assembly and testing facilities. Malaysia offered several advantages: an educated English-speaking workforce, political stability, good infrastructure, and competitive costs. But here's where Malaysia's approach was different from many other countries that hosted foreign manufacturers. Instead of just being passive hosts, Malaysian companies and workers actively learned every aspect of the semiconductor business. They started in simple assembly operations, then moved into testing, then into packaging, and eventually into design and advanced manufacturing. Today, Malaysia isn't just a place where semiconductors are assembled, it's where some of the world's most advanced chips are designed and manufactured. The country has become particularly strong in power semiconductors, which are crucial for electric vehicles, renewable energy systems, and advanced electronics. This success in semiconductors is creating ripple effects throughout Malaysia's economy. Universities have developed world-class engineering programs to supply skilled workers to the industry. An ecosystem of supporting industries has emerged: specialized equipment manufacturers, chemical suppliers, logistics companies, and engineering services firms. Perhaps most importantly, the success in semiconductors has given Malaysia credibility in other high-tech industries. When international companies are looking for locations to develop advanced manufacturing or research and development facilities, Malaysia is now on the short list of serious contenders. The ASEAN advantage: cooperation over competition. One of the most important aspects of Malaysia's economic strategy is how they've positioned themselves within ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Rather than viewing their neighbors as pure competitors, Malaysia has embraced a model of cooperative competition that benefits everyone involved. Think of ASEAN like a neighborhood where all the residents work together to make the entire area more attractive and prosperous. Malaysia specializes in certain industries like semiconductors and palm oil. Singapore focuses on financial services and shipping. Thailand dominates automotive manufacturing, and Vietnam excels in textiles and consumer electronics manufacturing. This specialization means that these countries often complement each other rather than directly competing. Malaysian semiconductor components might go into Thai-manufactured cars that are financed through Singapore banks and shipped through Vietnamese ports. It's a complex web of economic relationships that makes the entire region stronger and more resilient. Malaysia has been particularly smart about building these regional partnerships. The country is part of multiple trade agreements that reduce barriers for Malaysian companies to do business throughout Southeast Asia. They've also invested heavily in infrastructure projects that connect Malaysia to its neighbors: better roads, improved ports, and enhanced digital connectivity. This regional integration strategy has made Malaysia much more resilient to global economic shocks. When demand from one region or industry declines, Malaysian companies can often shift their focus to other markets or sectors within the ASEAN network. Innovation ecosystems, building the future. Let's talk about one of the most exciting aspects of Malaysia's current economic strategy: their push to build innovation ecosystems that can compete with Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv, or Shenzhen. This is perhaps the most challenging part of Malaysia's economic transformation, but also potentially the most rewarding. Creating an innovation ecosystem isn't just about having smart people or good universities, although those are important. It requires a complex combination of factors: access to capital, tolerance for failure, strong intellectual property protections, connections to global markets, and what economists call knowledge spillovers, where ideas and expertise spread quickly between companies and individuals. Malaysia has been building these innovation ecosystems strategically. The multimedia supercorridor, established in the 1990s, was one of the world's first attempts to create a dedicated zone for technology companies. While it took longer than expected to gain traction, it's now home to hundreds of technology companies and has become a model for similar projects across Southeast Asia. More recently, Malaysia has focused on building innovation clusters around specific industries where they already have competitive advantages. The semiconductor cluster in Penang brings together manufacturing companies, design firms, research institutions, and supporting services in a concentrated geographic area. This proximity allows for rapid knowledge transfer and collaboration. The government has also created various funding mechanisms to support innovation. These range from grants for university research to venture capital funds that invest in promising startups. The goal is to create a complete financing pipeline that can support companies from initial research through to global expansion. Sustainable growth, the environmental challenge. As Malaysia continues to grow economically, the country faces the same challenge that every developing economy must navigate: how to balance economic growth with environmental sustainability. This challenge is particularly acute for Malaysia because so much of their traditional economy has been based on natural resource extraction. Malaysia is one of the world's largest producers of palm oil, which has been both an economic blessing and an environmental challenge. Palm oil plantations have provided employment and export revenues, but they've also contributed to deforestation and habitat destruction. The challenge is finding ways to maintain the economic benefits while minimizing environmental damage. The Malaysian government has responded by implementing some of the world's most advanced sustainable agriculture standards. Malaysian palm oil producers must now meet strict environmental criteria, including protecting existing forests and implementing sustainable farming practices. It's not a perfect solution, but it represents a serious attempt to balance economic and environmental priorities. Malaysia is also investing heavily in renewable energy, particularly solar power. The country's location near the equator gives it excellent solar resources, and the government has created incentives for both utility-scale solar projects and distributed rooftop solar installations. The goal is to reduce dependence on fossil fuel imports while creating new industries around renewable energy technology. Perhaps most importantly, Malaysia is positioning itself to be a leader in what's called the circular economy: economic models that minimize waste and maximize resource efficiency. This approach could give Malaysian companies competitive advantages in global markets that increasingly value sustainability. The digital transformation, embracing the future. One of the most exciting aspects of Malaysia's current economic evolution is their embrace of digital transformation across all sectors of the economy. This isn't just about having good internet infrastructure, although that's important. It's about reimagining how business is done in a digital-first world. Malaysia has invested heavily in digital infrastructure, including some of the fastest internet speeds in Southeast Asia and comprehensive mobile network coverage. But more importantly, they've created policies and programs that help traditional businesses integrate digital technologies into their operations. The government's digital economy blueprint aims to make Malaysia a regional leader in e-commerce, digital financial services, and technology-enabled services. This includes everything from helping small businesses set up online stores to creating regulatory frameworks for cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. One particularly interesting development is Malaysia's emergence as a hub for Islamic finance technology, or fintech. Malaysia has long been a leader in Islamic banking, and they're now applying that expertise to digital financial services. Malaysian companies are developing Islamic fintech solutions that serve Muslim populations around the world, creating a unique niche in the global financial services industry. The digital transformation is also changing how Malaysia attracts and retains talent. The country's digital infrastructure and quality of life have made it attractive to technology professionals from around the world, while Malaysian graduates increasingly have opportunities to work for global technology companies without leaving the country. Regional leadership, Malaysia's growing influence. As we look toward the future, it's clear that Malaysia's economic success is translating into increased regional and global influence. This isn't just about the size of Malaysia's economy. It's about the country's role as a bridge between different regions, cultures, and economic systems. Malaysia's position as a Muslim-majority country with significant Chinese and Indian populations, combined with its history of successful economic development, gives it unique credibility in global affairs. Malaysian leaders are often called upon to mediate between different countries or to provide expertise on economic development strategies. The country has also become an important voice in international economic organizations. Malaysia plays active roles in ASEAN, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, and various United Nations economic agencies. Their experience with managing economic development while maintaining political stability makes their perspectives valuable in global policy discussions. Perhaps most importantly, Malaysia is emerging as a model for other developing countries. The Malaysian approach to economic development, emphasizing education, infrastructure, foreign investment, and gradual movement up the value chain, is being studied and adapted by countries in Africa, Latin America, and other parts of Asia. Looking forward, the next phase of growth. So where does Malaysia go from here? The country has successfully navigated the transition from a commodity-based economy to a diversified, increasingly sophisticated economy. But the next phase of development presents new challenges and opportunities. The most immediate challenge is completing the transition to a high-income economy. This requires continued investment in education, research and development, and advanced industries. Malaysia needs to continue moving up the value chain, from manufacturing products designed elsewhere to designing and creating their own innovative products and services. The country also needs to address some persistent structural challenges. Income inequality, while lower than in many countries, remains a concern. Regional disparities between different parts of Malaysia need to be addressed. And the country needs to continue strengthening its institutions and reducing corruption. But the opportunities are enormous. Malaysia is well positioned to benefit from several major global trends. The shift toward renewable energy plays to Malaysia's strengths in advanced manufacturing and natural resources. The growth of digital services creates opportunities for Malaysian companies to serve global markets. And the increasing importance of Southeast Asia in the global economy puts Malaysia at the center of one of the world's most dynamic regions. The semiconductor industry, which we discussed earlier, provides a perfect example of Malaysia's potential. As the world becomes increasingly digital, demand for semiconductors continues to grow. Malaysia's expertise in this industry positions them to benefit from everything from the growth of electric vehicles to the expansion of artificial intelligence. Lessons for other countries. Malaysia's economic development story offers valuable lessons for other countries attempting similar transformations. Perhaps the most important lesson is the value of learning from others while adapting strategies to local conditions. Malaysia didn't try to reinvent economic development from scratch. They studied successful countries, identified the principles behind their success, and then adapted those principles to Malaysian conditions. This approach allowed them to avoid many of the mistakes that other developing countries have made. The emphasis on education and human capital development has been crucial. Malaysia invested heavily in education long before the economic returns were obvious, and this investment has paid enormous dividends as the country has moved into more sophisticated industries. The approach to foreign investment has also been exemplary. Rather than just welcoming foreign investment for its own sake, Malaysia focused on investments that would transfer knowledge and capabilities to local companies and workers. This has allowed the country to build genuine industrial capabilities rather than just serving as a low-cost production location. Perhaps most importantly, Malaysia has maintained a long-term perspective even as governments have changed. The basic development strategy has remained consistent across multiple decades and multiple administrations, allowing the country to build momentum and achieve compound growth. Conclusion: A strategic powerhouse emerges. As we wrap up our deep dive into Malaysia's remarkable economic transformation, it's worth stepping back to appreciate the bigger picture. In just 5 decades, Malaysia has transformed itself from a resource-dependent colonial economy into one of Asia's most strategically important economic powers. This transformation wasn't driven by massive population like China, or oil wealth like the Gulf states, or financial services like Singapore. Instead, Malaysia built its success on smart strategy, continuous learning, geographic advantages, and careful long-term planning. The country's journey from tin mines and rubber plantations to semiconductor manufacturing and digital services hubs illustrates what's possible when developing countries approach economic transformation strategically and systematically. Malaysia's success has been built on understanding their own advantages, learning from other successful countries, and adapting continuously as global conditions change. But perhaps most importantly, Malaysia's story shows that economic development doesn't have to be a zero-sum competition between countries. By building strong relationships with their neighbors, learning from international partners, and creating value for global supply chains, Malaysia has shown that developing countries can prosper by making themselves indispensable rather than just cheap. As we look toward the future, Malaysia faces the same challenges that all successful developing countries eventually confront. How to transition from following others to leading innovation, how to maintain competitiveness as wages rise, and how to ensure that economic growth benefits all citizens. The early signs suggest that Malaysia is approaching these challenges with the same strategic thinking and long-term perspective that drove their initial success. For other countries watching Malaysia's continued evolution, the lessons are clear. Success in the modern global economy requires more than just natural resources or cheap labor. It requires strategic thinking, continuous learning, institutional development, and the patience to build capabilities over decades rather than years. Malaysia's transformation from a colonial commodity supplier to a strategic economic powerhouse isn't just an inspiring success story. It's a roadmap for how developing countries can build sustainable, diversified economies in an increasingly complex global marketplace. That's all for today's deep dive into Malaysia's economic transformation. What aspects of Malaysia's development strategy do you think are most applicable to other developing countries? And what challenges do you think Malaysia will face as they continue their journey toward becoming a fully developed economy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to subscribe to Econosphere for more in-depth explorations of global economic trends and development strategies. Until next time, keep thinking economically.